Close the door behind you. You're now in the green room.
Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Green Room. I'm your host, Caddy Manuel, and today I'm in the green room with Romaro Greaves.
Hey, everybody.
All right. You've probably seen him at the top of this episode. As always, I always put the feature at the top of the episode just so you know who we're speaking to and who we're dealing with. I've had the pleasure of featuring him on the platform a number of times. But before we get into anything, I just want to give you the floor, Romaro, just to tell the viewers and listeners a little bit about you, a little bit about what you want them to know.
Hi, everybody. My name is Romaro Greaves. I am a Christian, husband, saxophone player, of an individual who's made music my livelihood and being and passion for ... years. So yeah, that's me. We are in this whole green room to find out a little bit more about me. But that's just the introduction. So.
All right. Very good. Very good. And I have to tell you, I'm excited and happy to have you in the green room today.
I am excited to be here too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation, man. So the first time I saw you, the first time I saw some of your content, saw you playing, it was with the Nicholas Branca Band. The viewers and listeners, if you've seen that episode, I spoke to Mr. Branca not too long ago, just about a year ago, I believe. What can you tell us with your affiliation or your involvement with that band?
My involvement with that band, oh dear, that sounds so official. I have been a part of the Nicholas Branca Band, I want to say about 10, 11 years. You're putting me in a position where I have to count the amount of time that I've been in the band. I've been a part of that band for a while, and I must say, it's a learning experience every time I meet and interact with Nicholas. And every time we come together as a group, it's always a learning experience. Nicholas by himself is a phenomenal musician. And
Absolutely.
When you pair that with the other phenomenal musicians that are in the band, it's a real experience, to say the least. It's one where you're always learning something. And two, the camaraderie is genuine. And it feels like a family. There are times where we have conversation in rehearsal that sometimes have nothing to do with music, and it has everything to do with anything else that has to do with life. And believe it or not, for those who are watching who may not necessarily be in a band or who may not necessarily be playing music but are interested in music, life does impact how you play. And the experiences that you have outside of music definitely inform how you play and perform music. And so I will say that a lot of those conversations have sparked a lot of things for me personally in terms of how I live, in terms of what I do musically. So yeah, that band is more than just a cadre of musicians. It definitely has impacted my life in a number of ways.
Okay.
So yeah.
No, so there's a couple of things that you said there that I want to unpack.
Oh dear.
No, but even before I get into that, I remember when I spoke to Mr. Branca, he said something that I thought was very profound, right? He said that Caribbean music typically expresses happiness, right? We have soca music and calypso music and all these very light-hearted and festive genres.
Zouk.
Yeah, you have Zouk, things that make you want to get up and dance.
Yeah.
But he said that one thing that he's particularly interested in is exploring the full spectrum of human emotion through the lens of Caribbean music. All right. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll I'll tell you this. My thoughts on that have a lot to do with my interaction with him. Um, I want to say before interacting with him, or I should say along the journey of interacting with him and being a part of the band and um, being around him, um, I didn't take. I don't want to say that I did not take our music seriously. What I want to say is that I never thought about it from the same. Well, I no longer think of it the same way in the sense that I had that same view. It's always joyful. It's always, up and very bouncy and feel good and dance and do this and do that. Um, but being around him and seeing, his process in terms of, arranging stuff and just conversation as well, it really enlightened me, and it opened me up to the reality that there are so many other um, emotions that we as humans feel that we in the Caribbean do not go to our native music for those things.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when you think about here's this. When you think about going down the aisle at a wedding, you think about the brown white nights and the boys to men. You don't think about putting on anything from our space. Why?
Right.
Because in your mind, culturally, we believe, it's a romantic thing. And to be quite honest, there are very few things that automatically spark romance about what we do. Because yes, there are songs that have a romantic spin to it, but because of the rhythms and so on, we don't go there. That is not the emotion that we connect with that. And it's because of being with him, I realized, you know what? It is something that, we all as Caribbean musicians should explore. To be honest with you, it is something that because of being with him, that I too try to explore in my own music. It may come from a slightly different angle, or it may come from the same space, but performance of it may vary, it may not. But just the idea of wanting to explore the possibilities, the emotions that are, the many emotions rather that we have as human beings, I believe strongly, like he does, that there is a way that we can, approach bringing those emotions out of people with our music. And so hopefully 15, 20 years from now, people will think more about our music in the space of a wedding, in the space of, for lack of a better example, a funeral. But you get my point.
Yeah,
just to have our music being featured in more spaces than just a fan.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
And guys, you're probably wondering exactly what Mr. Branca said. I'm going to go ahead and slide that in right here.
The full gamut of emotions that Caribbean people experience are not easily found in their music. So, for example, when people are getting married or when there's a funeral,
I think I know exactly where you're going.
They lose their loved one or something, like moments of intense emotion.
All right.
We tend to have to go to other genres to find the music that we identify with. And that has always bothered me. I feel like I should be able to research as a historian. I should be able to look through my music, the music from the Caribbean, and trace our emotional development, not just our political development, but our emotional development and our social development. So
that's very profound. Yeah, so that's what he said, and that's basically informing what we just touched on in conversation there. Now the other thing is this: you mentioned that the way you live has an impact on the way you play, or your life experience is often reflected in your playing, right?
Mhm.
And I'm wondering what that means for you, right? How has that been the case in your life, or on your end?
Um, when you experience loss,
Mm-hmm.
you play from a different place than a person who has not really connected with that emotion as yet in their life. Um, and that is not to say I need you to go and, kill your cat or dog so that you experience that.
Right.
I'm just saying that that brings about a certain dynamic about you as a person. That also forces you to kind of do some, looking in and kind of be very introspective about who you are as a person and where do you go from this point. And that, believe it or not, will have a profound um, effect on how you play. And it may sound strange, but it does have some validity. Um, Also, when you're excited about something, you are going to play differently.
Right.
Um, and there have been few times. I mean, we've all been victim of it. When you're not interested in something, you also play differently. So yes, you as a person and the things you go through and the things you experience, they do have an effect on how you play.
Right. And just to echo that, right? Because I think this connects very nicely to my conversation last month with Drum Ninja. Um, he mentioned that something that has been critical for him in his career
Mhm.
is to bring good energy to the bands that he plays with, and you get calls back when people enjoy playing with you and they enjoy being
Most
around you.
definitely.
And I don't think that should be, that I don't think that's insignificant, because if the way that you play itself is influenced by the way that you feel, then you want the right people around you to make you feel right,
True,
to
true,
ensure that you're
true,
playing your best. Right. So I think it's
true.
important. Were you about to say something?
Well, yeah, because the truth is that not every circumstance is ideal. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you end up being in a situation where you're playing with musicians who don't necessarily feel the way you do about music,
Mm-hmm.
or two, they as a person may very well be, a little different. And that's kind of where, your professionalism comes in and your musicianship. All of those qualities as a musician come to the forefront, and you got to know, perform, even though the circumstance and the environment is less than ideal. Um, and then you got to draw now from you as a person and what you want to deliver to people,
All right.
because that's also part of it. Um, okay, for instance, for myself, when I go to play, I want people to take something away from what I'm doing. That is something that, one, I pray about, and two, I always try to, focus on that when I play in front of people. I want people to take something away from what I'm doing. I just don't want them to be impressed by musicality or ability or none of the I want to say icing. I want them to be more I want them to be more involved and interested in my message.
Mm-hmm.
And that is definitely something that is at the forefront of me as a musician, because I always want people to get, one, how I feel about music through what I play and how I play, but as well as a message, whatever that message may be. So that is also a part of playing and being a musician, having something that you want to convey to your audience. You can't
All
just be
right.
out there because you want to play. There has to be more to just wanting to play. I mean, I love to play, but there has to be something more substantial to that.
Yeah, and I think once there is that more, right? Once there is that extension of purpose, then your music really transcends uh, just the typical format or the typical experience that people feel. Right. So I applaud you on that. It leads me to another question I wanted to ask you. I see that you were recently nominated for Musician of the Year by, I don't know how to pronounce it.
What going on?
Guys, what's going on? The People's Choice Awards.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was last year.
Oh,
Yeah,
it was last year. Okay.
Yeah. But that's still recent because I mean that was just a couple, months ago.
Yeah. So tell me then what happened last year and what was your reaction leading up to this accomplishment there?
My reaction leading up to it. To be honest with you, I did not even know till friends of mine, actually bandmates in the same Nicholas Michael band, the horn players that play with me. One of them mentioned it to me, and I was like, "Pardon? I don't know." So when he did mention it, I went and checked, and I was like, "Oh, yeah." It was for me very humbling. I must say that. The truth of the matter is that firstly, it was humbling for the fact that I was nominated with a list of people who I respect as fellow musicians. But secondly, and I feel this is probably even a little more significant than the first, as important as the first is, the fact that my peers and the general public appreciate what I do as a musician. That is something that I want to say up until that point never really hit home as hard as at that moment. Because I do what I do because I love what I do.
Right.
And I do what I do because I feel like it's part of my purpose with being here. But I didn't realize that much that people did enjoy and appreciate what I do. I know people enjoy hearing me play or whatever, but to the degree where they would nominate me to be, to have a title of being the best musician, that's not a thing I was seeing. Needless to say, it is not a thing that I, hold in the front of my mind. I still try to focus very seriously on what my purpose is and what my goals and ambitions and aspirations are as a musician. And so I was very humbled by the nomination. The fact that I was even nominated was a humbling thing for me.
All right. Very good. So you did mention that there were a number of people that you admire musically on the nominated list as well, right? Can you share some of those people or just other people in general that you admire musically? And any additional mentors or fellow musicians that you'd want to just shout out?
Okay, cool. There were a couple of musicians on the list who are people that I play with from time to time on the scene. And I respect them for both what they do and what they bring to their performance, their playing, the space. And one of the nominees actually happened to be Arturo as well. And he's a musician who I have a lot of respect for. I actually I was one of his students at one point in time, and the mentorship with him was definitely life-changing for me because to be honest with you, when you talk about saxophone players and people tend to think about everybody outside. But I'll be honest with you, he is not only a fantastic musician, but one of the best saxophone players anywhere. You know what I mean? And I say that without a shadow of a doubt. And I have a lot of respect for him. He's an amazing musician. So to just be in that space, that was, I was like, okay, people actually think, I am decent enough to be in the same space.
Yeah.
But it's so yeah, yeah. So he was definitely on the list. And there are a number of musicians who I admire. Um, but the three that I would want to mention by name would have to be fellow musician who I consider a brother, an older brother essentially, Mr. Darian Bailey.
Okay.
Keyboard is extraordinaire. And he, the thing that I admire about him is the bravado that he has, the confidence that he has, and that confidence that he has, he applies that to everything he does, whether it's playing live, whether it's producing music, whether it's musically directing bands. He comes with a certain bravado that, I look at that and I say, you know what? That is something that one has to, you know, have when you want to say, hey, I'm leading this group and I want you to, believe in what I am doing. Because the truth of the matter is if you're leading something, people are always looking at you for what's the next move.
All right.
And if people look at you and you don't look sure, they kind of lose, And so I definitely admire that about him, that the bravado that he has. One of the other musicians that I admire too is this is a saxophone player from outside. His name is Kirk Whalum. And yes, he's an amazing saxophone player, yes. But the thing that really impresses me about him is his ability to be unapologetically Christian and how he functions within the secular space and is respected for both his faith as well as his craft and his ability. That is something that I admire because unfortunately, there's the notion, especially within the Caribbean space, that, Christian musicians are not good musicians, or at least that some Christian musicians are okay and most of them are not. And then there's also the follow-up notion that, if he's a Christian, he could only function in a Christian setting.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you have been blessed with the gift of music and your calling is to function in a specific space, then it would be remiss of you to not function in that space, regardless of if it is secular or sacred. And if you are supposed to function in a secular space, you should not not be a Christian in that space. People should still know that you believe in who you believe in and that you function in the space as a musician, but respect what I believe in, respect who I am. And so I admire that about him and his ability to function in the space and be respected both for his faith and his musicianship. And thirdly, bring it back home. I mean, I can't have this interview and not mention Nicholas as a person who I admire because of the reality that being with him for a number of years and being around him for a number of years, I should say, there are a number of things that I picked up from him. And one of those things is discipline. He's a very disciplined person, not only just musically, but in life in general. And that's something I highly admire. And it's not something that I want to say that I have perfected. I mean, none of us are perfect. And I wouldn't imagine that he would profess to have perfected it as well, because we are all on our own journeys, of doing what we have to do. But at the same time, I admire that a lot because the commitment to, doing what you set out to do is something that
it's not easy.
It isn't. It really isn't.
We all have, everybody, in fact, everybody you meet on the street has some great idea and something that they always wanted to do, something they really wanted to do, and it doesn't always get done.
It doesn't always get done, bro.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always come off the way that you want to.
Right.
But so long as you do it, I feel like that's, crucial.
Right.
And another point I want to say too is his commitment to the same thing we talked about earlier, actually. The idea that our Caribbean rhythms and our Caribbean music can do so much more than just make people feel like walking up and jumping up and doing bad. There's so many things that we can express emotionally with our music that I feel like we should all, as Caribbean musicians, aspire to express the full spectrum of emotion. And I admire that because I try in my small way to do the same, or attempt to at least do the same so that people can feel like what we do is on par and of equal value to everything else that we hear from outside.
All right. And I really think the path to doing so is really standing on the shoulders of giants, right? With each generation, with maybe in the next 10 to 15 years, 20 to 30 years, we'll have entire new genres of Caribbean music that can be traced back to this idea that Mr. Branca, yourself, and everybody is contributing to. And I think it's very important. I think it's very important, and it might change the face of the Caribbean music industry as we know it.
Hopefully. Hopefully.
Yeah, but I'm glad to hear that the work is being done in that direction, right? Now, we're kind of beginning to talk about the next steps and the future of your career, but before we even get there, I want to discuss the beginning, where the start came from, where you actually get set off on this journey, and how you first became aware of music, or even how you learned that you love it so much.
Wow. I feel like we should start with our question because
I typically do, but
I'll try to condense it.
Go ahead.
Try to condense my response to that. The truth of the matter is that I started out noodling on like recorder and stuff as a child. Never really, thinking too much of it because I had it home. My aunt gave me a recorder, and I would just play on that, and I never really took, much thought to it.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to be. I feel like every Caribbean boy wants to be either a cricketer or a football player, and I wanted to be a cricketer, and so I was not thinking about music at all. There was nowhere in my thought process as, between 8 to 12 where I was thinking about being a musician. I mean, what is that? Why would I want to do that?
You're too busy looking at Brian Lara and Shonda Paul and
I'll tell you this. I was a huge fan of Curtly Ambrose. Like, I watching everything that he do, and I try to, mimic my action to that as a pace bowler. And, I was headstrong into the cricket thing.
Yeah.
So one Sunday, a guy was playing saxophone at my church. He was the keyboard player, but he also plays saxophone. And so he got up one Sunday morning to play a special. And I happened to be playing drums at this time. Let's not have that story, but I happened to be playing drums. And my mother was also worship leading that same Sunday morning. And so while this gentleman is doing his special, I am nudging my mother, like, so what's that he playing? Waiting in. And she's looking at me, it's a saxophone. Just right. And I said, well, so I saw him pressing a couple things. And so I nudged her again, like, so what's that he pressing? And she looked, listen to me while playing. So needless to say, I was attracted by the instrument. I wasn't really into how it sung, blah, blah, blah. That's after. But how it looked, it was like, yo, this thing look cool. This looks super, super cool. And so I said, well, like, I feel like I want to try that. So I was probably like 9, 10. So you do your exams and you got to go into secondary school, right?
All right.
So I got into secondary school, and the second term of my first year at school. So still green in secondary school. And I went to the music teacher and I told her, hey, I want to play an instrument. And before she could even utter what instrument you want to play, I was like, that one. I had no idea what it was called.
Yeah.
I just knew what it looked like. So you understand why I say I was attracted by the look of it. I had no idea what it was, the name of it. So I was like, that one. And I just pointed to the one that looked like the one the guy played. I didn't know if it was alto, soprano, baritone, nothing. I was just like, that one. I was pointing, literally pointing. And so she brought it down, and, we set up the whole lesson thing, and cool. So 12 years old. Interestingly enough, and this is how I know that music kind of sought me out and not the other way around. Because mind you, I still into the cricket thing. Heavily to it. So to the point where the music teacher had to force me not to go to the cricket practice and come to his house and all that stuff. Right. So fast forward, 2 years later, I'm a part of the National Youth Orchestra here at the time. And there was this cultural exchange, and we had to go to Cuba. And we went 4 weeks in summer, and got there. We were supposed to do concert band stuff. And one day I heard a guy playing some saxophone, and he ain't playing, we'll be playing inside concert band rehearsal. And I was like, okay, I need to find that guy. And, like the Pied Piper, I am following the sound of the instrument to wherever he was. Got there, and I was, peeping behind the door. And he was in a small room practicing, doing some stuff that completely blew my mind. And I want to say that planted the seed for me of, okay, I want to do that. And I returned home to Barbados after that trip and realized, you know what, I want to be a musician. And so at 14, I decided I wanted to be a musician. And I've been on that journey and that quest ever since.
That's really beautiful, man. That's really good.
Yeah.
And I'm just listening to your story there, and it amazes me because I really feel like music is inside of people. Like you come into this world with that seed inside of you, right? Mm-hmm. And as you get older, it starts to come out and blossom, and the way it does so is through that interest, that initial interest from that little boy in that church, just looking at the, like, what's he doing?
Exactly.
Because every little boy doesn't have that.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
And so even from that young age, you could see and I could hear how that seed started to blossom as you got older, and I've been doing this green room show for we're approaching 2 years now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Approaching 3 years now, I think. It's kind of crazy how the time is but
it doesn't wait for anyone, bro.
Yeah, but as much as I've had the opportunity and the privilege to speak to musicians all across the diaspora, I had that similar journey from everyone where, there was that something. Everybody has that something deep down, and it starts to come out. Just at about that age, 9, 10, 7, 6, it's cool. It's cool.
Yeah,
and I really think that, because I'm a Christian myself, and I'll say I really think that God places that in people. And it's interesting to me earlier when you mentioned that there's a narrative in the Caribbean that Christian musicians are not that good. But it's ironic because the majority of musicians are Christian or they are church
Yeah.
musicians. They actually
Church.
started, you
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah.
that's an ironic take if that's the
Yeah.
case.
Because and not to cut you off, but
Mhm,
sometimes what happens is that, you you think that the idea of being a good musician exists outside of the church setting.
mhm.
And with that, sometimes, the temptations of what are out there, the things that are out there, lead you to kind of, navigate away from your Christian, background. And you end up doing a lot of things that you probably should not do. And, it kind of courses your direction in a whole different, field. But the truth of the matter is that if that calling is still there,
Mm-hmm.
you've never really left it. I mean, it never left you, but
Right.
you may decide to go elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But it's sad how that works,
Yeah.
because you tend to get, in an interesting way, you tend to get more respect for your ability outside, which
Yes.
should never really be so, but unfortunately it is.
Yeah. I think some of that is because very often musicians are seen throughout their entire journey growing up in these same churches and growing up in the same space. And so people don't realize the level of growth. And so the associated respect doesn't follow. Whereas in other spaces where these people aren't as familiar with
Yeah.
you, you come in and you're like, wow, it's,
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's,
yeah, yeah. Yep, yep,
yeah.
yep, yep, yep.
So I think that may play a role.
It does.
Now I have another thing for you here. Before we get to like the future trajectory of your career, right, and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
I want you to imagine with me that we're sitting in front of a full auditorium full of Caribbean musicians from all
Mm-hmm.
across the diaspora. We have the Lucians and the Bajans and the Trinis and the
Mm-hmm.
Grenadians. Everybody's here, right? Because virtually, you know,
They are.
there there are, right. This is gonna be on YouTube. It's gonna go all around. So what would you say to the region right now, in terms of what would you say to these musicians? You have the floor, you have an open floor. What are some things that you might want to say to them?
Um, don't stop believing in what you do and who we are as Caribbean people. Um, I feel like we have a lot to say,
Mm-hmm.
but I find like we want to fit a certain mold that is essentially what everybody else's impression of who we are is. And that kind of stifles the extent of what we can do. And so we should really just focus on being the best version of ourselves that we can be. Because the truth of the matter is that whether you believe it or not, everybody outside want to have a piece of what we do. And
Absolutely.
funny enough, they like what we do and want to incorporate it into their thing. You know what I mean?
All right.
And they don't necessarily get done well.
Mm-hmm.
And there are like, A-list musicians that are trying it. And they're, celebrated musicians who are, trying to tap into what we do, and they're getting close. I would dare say that if we don't watch ourselves, they may end up doing it just as good as we do, and we will not realize. But because we are in this space, and because it is so innate to us, I feel like we should capitalize on our unique perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth of the matter is that they want it, And if someone else wants something better, well, more than you, eventually they will take it and they will go further than you with your own thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So let's not play catch up, because when we playing catch up, it means that we've lost our thing to someone else. So let's not play catch up. Let us lead with what we do and let them try to, try to act. So what it is that you're doing, what is it that is so different about how you do what you do? You know what I mean? I recently watched a documentary, and this was kind of like shot like way back. But it was a documentary on Kassav. And the documentary had Nile Rodgers from Cheek and Miles Davis in it, and they were talking highly about Kassav music. And it's like, those are people that you hear about, look up to. Their records are the records that sell millions. Those those guys' records are the records that we look to, learn music off of. And they're looking at Kassav stuff and having such high respect for it and speaking about it in such high regard. It's like, but hey, we have to have something about what we are doing that everybody else want to know what it is that we are doing. So let's not shoot ourselves in the foot and say, oh, we think it's only for blah blah blah. Nah, we can do so much with what we have, and so don't sleep on it. Let's not sleep on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think another way to package that is basically saying to appreciate your authenticity before it is duplicated.
Oh, of course.
Right.
Of course. And there are a lot of copies that have been already made.
Yeah.
They're not good copies, but copies nonetheless.
Yeah, and I think so. In my opinion, some of what happens there is that larger economies tend to have more money, and so they can afford wider distribution, right? And also with a larger population, there might be that sense of greater appreciation, right? And so, for example, I remember when I started playing music, and I'm more of a gospel musician, right? So I started becoming aware of your Kirk Franklin and your Israel and New Breed,
right,
and all that stuff. And I used to listen to those records and go like, yo, how are they doing? What is that?
Yeah.
But the reason that is not because these musicians are necessarily, bringing something that our space cannot bring, but it's more so that their net is wider, right? The reach is wider just because of the money and the funding and the audience that they have, right? And so I think what you just said is so important, in order for us to keep the flavor that we have as a Caribbean people and Caribbean musicians. So folks, I hope you guys received that. I hope you guys processed that. My dad used to have this funny saying. He used to say, put it in your thinking cap and smoke it. So
take it, put it in your pipe and smoke it.
Yeah, put it in your pipe and smoke it. That's what he used to say.
Funny enough, my father would tell me that as a child too.
So before we head out the door, just two more things. If you could just kind of give us a sense of where you would like your career to head, what are you working towards now? And secondly, what questions do you have for the cadence? What questions do you have for me?
I'll start with me first and with you. Where I see myself, let me put it this way. Within the next 5 years, I want to be doing more touring. Things are open back up now, so you could tour.
Right.
So I want to do more touring, doing my own music. And the truth of the matter is that I do like to write and compose. And I do have, original pieces out. So, for those of you watching, you can always key me in on YouTube and you'll find my stuff. But I just want to put more stuff out, for people to hear, how as I mentioned earlier, how I feel about music, and also the message or messages that I want to convey to people, in a tangible way for people to take and have their own copy that they can listen at their leisure.
Yeah.
And not necessarily having to, see where next I am to performing live. Needless to say, when I'm in your space, please come out and watch me play. But yes, within the next 5 years, I want to see myself I'm seeing myself doing more of that. And I'm presently, working on new music, to put out and release for the people so that they can hear what I have to offer. So that's definitely what I see, especially in my immediate future. And in the distant future, I just really want to be, someone who has contributed in a significant way, or rather in my small way, to, the landscape of music here in Barbados and within the wider region, in a way where, what I do can influence the generation behind. I don't want to be, another statistic. I want to be in a position where, people can listen to what I do and be influenced by what I've done. Just the same way how I've been influenced by Arturo and by Nicholas and everybody else who are even local heroes here who, I've had the privilege and honor to work with, talk with, learn from. You know what I mean? I just want to be able to contribute and pay it forward to the next generation, and in my small way, be able to contribute. So those are the things that I have for my future.
Okay, very good. Yeah, thanks for sharing that with us. And it sounds to me that you're very well on your way. So I want to encourage you to stay focused.
Thank you, brother.
I'm confident. I'm very confident that God will direct your path in that direction.
Thank you.
And finally, what are your questions for the cadence?
I think it's a two-pronged question.
Okay.
And I guess you could kind of answer it all at once. But I would ask you, what is your mission for the platform? And what got you started on this journey?
And no problem. So the mission of the platform, right, is to, of course, it is a networking platform, right? So we've managed to connect musicians across the Caribbean region in a way that was never done before. And now folks in Barbados know folks in Jamaica, and folks in Jamaica know folks in St. Lucia, and people are working together. We actually have a venture called Carry Collabs, where at least a few times a year, we're able to bring musicians across the region together to actually work on a project. And we're happy to have 2 Carry Collabs out already, and the third one is currently being mixed as we speak.
Lovely.
So I'm looking forward to how that's going to come out. It's a different sound from some of the past too.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. It's very intense. And I really like it. We have some very talented musicians on that one. So yeah, number one, a networking platform. And we're excited and happy to give exposure to all the Caribbean talent that we have, right? When I first started Caribbean Cadence, called Lucian Musicians at the time, I can't say that I was completely sure that I would have the content for the rate or frequency of posting that I was looking for. But I came to realize that there's an overabundance of talent,
Yeah.
and honestly, the two post format that we have could become a three post or four post format. The only limitation is just really my time and my
Mm,
own availability to feature people. But there's
I
an
see.
overabundance of people, and we have a very talented region, very talented musicians. But even aside and above, well, not above, but alongside networking, it's also a platform for learning, right?
Mm,
We haven't had the bandwidth to grow in that direction as much as we would like at this stage.
okay.
But it's an internal conversation that's happening. And as time goes on, we hope to continue to grow to the point where we can facilitate learning,
Right.
right? And not just learning, but additionally, we have musicians that need instruments, they need resources,
Mm,
they need tools and equipment, to continue to grow, to continue to maximize their potential.
right, right,
and
right.
and it's in my vision to continue to grow the platform to the point where we can begin providing these musicians with some of what they need, right?
Mm,
So I'm looking forward to us getting to that point. And you asked how this all started, right?
mm-hmm,
So when I left, I did secondary school in St. Lucia, right?
right.
I'm St. Lucian. And I went to college here in the US, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I moved to the US for university. And I missed my friends. I had a lot of musician friends in St. Lucia. And
I can imagine.
yeah, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a point in the internet where, all these live arrangements started coming out. And
Yeah, 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 yeah,
so I would find these things, and I was playing with a band here on this end, and some of these guys are still some of my best friends today. And we would just be finding these things and sharing them, and I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to share them with my friends back home. So
Right, right, right.
I created this Facebook group, and I would start sharing these videos in there. And I was kind of surprised because the group started to grow, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then of course I got busy, and life happened and I stepped away for a while.
True.
um but then a few years ago, I sat down and I thought, that was kind of fun. And I had gotten to the point where I, just from, other things that I'm involved with, I learned a
Mhm.
little bit more about digital marketing. I started to learn a little bit more about social media. I
Okay.
said to myself, you know what? I can channel some of that same stuff I was doing before
Mhm.
with a platform for Caribbean instrumentalists,
Mhm. Sweet.
and that's how the whole platform was born, you
Mhm.
know? So
That's cool.
yeah, that's
That's
where we
very,
are.
very cool. That's
Um,
very, very cool.
we've grown to the point where now there's a team. I'm happy to work alongside Eliezer in Jamaica, and we
Okay.
have Makayo Carter in
Yeah.
Barbados.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah. You
looks
know,
like you know
Mikhail.
Makayo.
Hey, I did a
Yeah.
couple things with him too.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, his future is very bright, man. I'm very
Oh
proud
yeah.
of him. I'm very
Most
proud to see what
definitely.
he's doing.
Most
Um,
definitely.
he's a very ambitious young man, and shout out to Makayo.
Yeah,
Uh,
man. Mr.
so
Carter.
yeah, man. So that's the cadence. That we're going into our third year now, and when
Sweet.
people see this, it's going to be December. I
Mm-hmm.
believe it's going to be December. I'm not completely sure, but guys, there will be one more episode following this. We're happy to have Romaro in the green room with us. You have anything else to say before we head out?
I'll just say keep striving to all those young musicians out there. Um, don't give up on your dream. I mean, I know that may sound cliche, but the truth is that if you don't believe in it, no one else is going to believe in it for you.
All
So
right.
you got to believe in it for yourself. And look out for some more music.
Yeah, guys, absolutely look out for his music. I'm going to be sharing Romaro's information in the caption of this video. Also, if you're following us on Instagram, you will see a number of features of his leading up to the release of this episode. So make sure you go check out those features. Check out his handle on Instagram. Make sure you support. Get some music, get some merch.
Thank
I don't
you.
know if you have merch, but
Soon.
yes.
Yeah,
So
man.
so
Let's
keep an
speak
eye
it
out
all
for
into
that.
being. Speak it all into being. Come on.
Yeah, man. Keep an eye out
Yeah.
for that.
Oh
And
yeah, keep it out for that.
yeah, make sure you show your support. You know how to do it. And I will see you guys. I don't know if I'll see you guys next month, but because
Place some pressure on him to
you know
come
what,
out next
I
month.
will see you guys next month. I will. I'll make some adjustments and I'll see you guys next month. I'm not too sure who we'll be speaking to next month yet, but you can just stay tuned. I have a feeling it'll be a very special guest. And yeah, see you guys next month. And
Good.
thanks for sticking with us another year. Thank you so much, Romaro, for joining us. And
No problem, brother.
bye for now, guys.
Take care.